In this video, I talked to Boris Tseytlin, a machine learning engineer and team lead. He shares his successful international job search story. We then talk about study tips from his instructor's career. Finally, we discuss crowdsourcing for predictions of catastrophic events and ways to push yourself to act on those predictions. Let's jump right in.
It's like, this interview question. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I took it from. Interview question. Tell us about yourself.
So, my name is Boris. I am from Moscow, and currently I'm actually in Portugal. I work as, my title is Senior Machine Learning Scientist, but in fact, currently I do more engineering at a company that does vertical farming. I can dive deeper into this stuff.
Vertical farming. So they kind of grow vegetables on shelves.
Stuff on shelves in a completely isolated environment, so that it does not have parasites, pesticides, and whatnot. And you have robots inside, so that people don't have to go in to make the environment sterile, and so on. And it has a lot of interesting economical effects and technical difficulties. But well, back to me, I think it might be interesting for the people that watch us to know about my education. Originally, I studied at Moscow Aviation Institute in Moscow, obviously, and then had my master's at Higher School of Economics at the computer science faculty, which I really love to this day. And I had some experience teaching there as well. So that is also something I can tell about. What would you like to know?
What other work experience do you have? I read that you worked at Yandex Toloka, I think.
That's true. So before the current company, Planet Farms, I did work at Yandex Toloka for about a year. And before this, I was a machine learning engineer. I was a software engineer at a few places. So I actually was really surprised when I was searching, doing my job search recently, to find out that I have almost 9 years of experience by now. And I felt like really old at this point. But there is less because there are gaps, but still, it's a weird feeling.
Tell me about your job search process. As a side note, I actually did my job search and applied to various companies as a software engineer as well, but I miserably failed. Actually, I withdrew from the process. So interesting to see how you organized the search process and then the interview process. Also the negotiation process, of course, but we're gonna talk about it later on.
Okay, so first of all, first thing people need to know about a job search, a full-scale one, is that it's basically like chewing glass. And I think that's what you experienced. It does feel this way. So my process was very systematic in the sense that I decided to do it full-scale this time. And it was essentially a second job, in the sense that every day you sit down and you submit a lot of applications. As many as you can muster.
How do you do that? How do you submit your applications?
Yeah, okay, so I set up myself a pseudo CRM kind of a table in Notion with companies.
Kind of a funnel.
Yeah, exactly, a funnel.
Where you move the cards from one part of the funnel to the next one.
Yeah. Okay. So I did that, and also I sat down and wrote a short document that would be the answer to the question, tell us about yourself, that contained who I am, what I want, what I can offer, and so on. That was just to summarize the stuff in my head. And so it helped me settle down on the position I wanted to consider. And the initial plan was that I would search for an ML team lead position, or ML engineering, or ML research, ML being machine learning.
Okay.
The idea was that even though being an ML team lead was a bit jumping over my head, I know there is a huge demand, and I thought I would risk it given that at this point people are needed and I might as well try.
Yeah, and then there's
But
little
that didn't
downside,
work.
right? You don't pay for
kind of.
trying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so after I've done this, then you just apply. You apply a lot. Like ideally, the job search should be like, your friend comes to you and says, "Oh, hey, do you want to join my new company as a CTO?" And then you go. But that's not the case for me.
My
had
new
no-
exchange listed company as a
Yeah,
CTO.
yeah.
Okay.
So in case you don't have access to an opportunity like this, where people just come knocking, asking you to join them, then you just have to apply. You search the job boards. Ideally, you find niche places with jobs that you're interested in. For example, for me, one of the best ones, and the one that eventually where my current job came from, was Hacker News. There is this website by Paul Graham and the Y Combinator company, Hacker News, which is basically just a place, a board with links, interesting stuff for engineers. And the point is that it has a shitty UI. It has a UI from the 90s or something, and it's actually very good, but it's completely repulsive to all the non-technical people. So it's a place for nerds. It's
So
a safe space.
it's another part of the selection process. Kind of
Yeah,
step
and
zero, use Hacker News.
Exactly. For example, when I was pushing, like a company I worked for was doing kind of bad PR job, and I was telling them, guys, you could go to communities where the engineers that you're targeting really hang out, like this one, and all the people except a few engineers were like, what the fuck is that? What is that? We cannot use this.
But
Yeah.
so there are links with listed jobs, and you
Yeah,
just
so-
follow those links, and then you find the email, copy it, and send your
There are,
resume.
the cool thing is that it's a community, so there are links just for you to read, but sometimes once a month they have a thread like who wants to be hired and who is hiring. And there people just post their jobs. But the interesting part is because of this whole filter, the people that post the jobs are usually the ones hiring. So team leads, CTOs of startups, and it's mainly a startup scene, of course, because Y Combinator is a startup community. So there you can just go directly to the people you will be working with, going completely past the whole, mass submission process, where they get thousands of resumes per each position. Yeah, and that's how I found the current job. I just emailed, and it turned out that I emailed the head of research of the company, and now I'm in his vertical in the company.
Okay, but what about LinkedIn?
I have a kind of a ranking of these sources. Basically, the higher in the ranking, the better the conversion. At least how often people even reply to you. And the more accessible a website is or a service, well, the worse your conversion, obviously. So I did use LinkedIn, and I did most of my applications. They did go through this mass ways of communication, of hiring and looking for jobs, because usually the other places don't have enough. But you get really few replies there. Even I think my job is kind of in a hot place now. Everyone, well, not everyone needs machine learning engineers, but they're in demand, and there are few. And still, I had quite a hard time. I don't exactly remember the stats now, but I think I had around 1% conversion to interviews.
To offer from application to offer.
Yeah, right. There was 1% to offer. That's true. Slightly higher. I just remember that there were very few interview requests.
Besides Hacker News, what else did you use? And LinkedIn, obviously.
Okay, so there was Hacker News, there was LinkedIn. I also tried some creative stuff, like, for example, stalking people on LinkedIn and messaging them directly, and asking recruiters on LinkedIn to sell me or find me jobs and so on. None of that worked at all. even though it sounds like something that should.
No, probably it's too accessible to other people, so they are just recruiters
Maybe.
get bombed all over by candidates. That's just my guess.
Maybe. Well, also, of course, I asked my friends for references. It's all quite standard, actually. And also through the company website. So, for example, if you want to apply to Google, then you have to go to the Google website, to DeepMind, which I did with no response, but still.
Did you choose any specific positions? Like, well, I understand ML researcher, ML engineer, but did you have other requirements for application? For example, you didn't want to take a test or kind of home assignment. Oh, what else did you consider as a requirement?
Yeah, right. So regarding the requirements, I have to say that I skipped some jobs outright. Something, for example, biomedical, bioinformatics and stuff. I just don't know anything about ML or anything biological.
Come on, but do you know much about vertical farming?
Well, enough, I guess, because it's actually computer vision. I do, and well, there is not much farming specific currently. Since the strategy is to go through it, actually submit a lot of applications.
Yep.
And the number one rule is to skip as much stuff as possible. And what I found is that most of the time, a task or something equivalent, like a huge psychological evaluation, like something some companies did send me, usually is not worth your time, because the chance that you will move forward, even get a reply, is very small. But you may end up spending a day or two on some test task, especially if you have a job at the same time. It's really like it won't let you submit 100 applications this way.
Right. You also want to sleep at night, I guess.
Also, one interesting thing I found is that you can actually skip a lot of these parts if you just ask people nicely. So what I did was that when people gave me a test task, sometimes I would message them and ask them nicely can we just skip that? Because I have a full-time job. You can find some of my code open source here. Maybe we could just do a technical interview. And surprisingly, a lot of time people just agree. And that's a very cool thing to do, I think. And people don't do it.
That's a cool life hack, actually. That's a good idea. It really can save you time, and you could invest that time into making more applications rather than deep diving into one application without really increasing your chances of success that much.
Yeah, and you also get more energy to invest in some test task or something else for the company you're really invested in. Because the idea is not like, just save your energy wherever you can, do a slacky job just so you can bombard as many people as possible with the applications. The idea is that when you really care, you can apply your all, like give it 100%. But you cannot be given 100% on every test task, on everything they ask.
Yeah, right. Okay, so what's next? Next, interviews and those same assignments that you choose to do for the companies that you're interested in. So
here it's quite standard. Interviews are interviews. You just try your best and that's it. About the test tasks, I really think that if one of them is interesting or the company is very interesting, then you should go the extra mile. You should do them as if you would do them if it was a task at your job. That is, if you are asked to make a system for recommending stuff, well, a tiny data set, you need to build a tiny model, the task is well defined. Like that's what I received at one company. You don't just fit a model and show some numbers like I did solve the task, here's a metric in the end. You think about, okay, this model should recommend something. How do we get recommendations from them? Which recommendations could work? And you could play around with it. You could show some even hand wavy, like very like not grounded in reality results. But at least people see that you actually care about the business problem, the job, not writing code,
Not the small task at hand, but the wider goals of the business.
Yeah. They see you really care, and usually people like this approach.
Tell us about some interviews that went sideways. Where did you fail?
Oh yeah, there was one. So there was these guys that do ML for finance. They use some models to turn very bad, outdated financial transactions into some JSON data, something you can parse with the machine, and they have like neat text. This is a receipt and so on. So it's pretty cool. Like ML, that's not bullshit, definitely. And so I was interested. I went to the interview, and the technical interview was with some guy from the team, and he asked me a few questions about neural networks. Always good, especially super good. Like I answered them deeper than they expected. That was clear. They were impressed. That was so far so good. And then he went on to ask me about math stuff. And so he asked me, can you name a function whose derivative is equals minus derivative of that function? And so
minus derivative.
Yeah,
exponent of minus x.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't so quick, and I thought, okay, this is something about exponents. And then I got really like stressed, and I completely forgot. Like I tried to just figure out it out by intuition, but I know that usually it's a bad idea to just shout your intuition, because I like to double check stuff. And like, I don't want to appear on an interview like I'm fumbling for an answer. I need to know it exactly. So I was like, okay, it's something about exponents, but I'm not just gonna say e to the power of x something with a minus somewhere, because I'm not sure. And so I was like, okay, audibly, I will just take the derivative. I think it's e to the power of minus x. And then I forgot how to take a derivative of a complex function. And then I tried to write out the chain rule. I did, because that's what we do in ML every day. And then I tried to take the complex derivative. So that's like a high school task. But suddenly my brain was completely empty. And then I proceeded to do something super stupid. Like I tried to multiply two exponents, and I fumbled with that you had to just sum the powers, but I stacked them on top of each other. So I just demonstrated that I completely do not understand how multiplication works, how derivatives work, how powers work. And then I started.
That you were completely stressed out, rather.
Yeah. And but then I did even worse. So I have this still a conviction that I'm not very good at math, despite teaching it at the Higher School of Economics and so on. And so this hit like really hard. And I told this guy that was interviewing me that like I'm really bad at math puzzles. And what came out was that it's very passive-aggressive. Actually, I accused him of asking me stupid questions. And then he told me, no, that's not a stupid question. That's not a math puzzle. It's about the intuition into calculus. And then we started arguing. That's even worse than getting a wrong answer or anything. So that was a complete disaster. It's the worst interview in this job. So
I think I can feel your pain there.
Another one I can tell real quick. So me and my friends, we left Russia together. We stayed in one house, and at some point we decided to play some Civilization, and we played well into the night, like 3 a.m. or so. And the next day I had an interview at like 10 a.m. I thought, okay, I can handle this. And the interview was a lead code with, so it was the last interview with the company. After like 4 of them, it was a company that kind of pretends to be funk. They have a long interview process, and I aced everything. But this one was with the head of data science of the company.
Well, and that's interesting that the head of data science of the company asked you a lead code question rather than about your experience.
He asked me a lead code question that involved just finding a maximum and a minimum in an array. but I
Oh,
was
yeah, you wouldn't expect such level of difficulty in a final question.
no,
Wow.
I think he was just double checking, that the person can do a basic coding thing. Like he was not trying to assess if I'm an
Okay.
expert coder, just a sanity check. So I kind of understand him. And I bet he felt really like angry at all the people that interviewed me before because I couldn't solve the task. I went to over the complicated in
Let
my
us use
head,
some dynamic programming here. Oh, I think
and
it's
then I was
Dijkstra.
super
It's
embarrassed.
Dijkstra.
Yeah. That was it. I was like, wow, should I use binary search? I think we could use a hash map somewhere. It was like, and I was asking for a hint, but he couldn't provide me a hint because if he did, he would solve the task because it was just looping from left to right. That's it. That was also very stupid.
Oh, I
And
think
they
you
rejected
can
me,
use two
obviously.
stacks actually. You can use a stack for minimum and maximum, like if you want to be fancy.
Yeah, you can use a heap. You can be really cool.
What are your
Yes.
takeaways from the interviews? What do you think you could have done better if you were to retry it again? And you probably will retry it again at some point later on.
At some point. Okay, so you have to sleep before the interviews. After this one, next time this happened, and unfortunately this did happen, I just postponed the interview. I told guys, I did not sleep well. I'm not in my shape. I don't want to, basically screw it up. So how about we postpone? And people, again, if you ask them nicely, they're okay with this usually. Of course, don't overdo it.
Yeah, I actually used this tactic today with our call when I
that's true.
spent
Exactly.
too much on Telegram, and then I asked if we can postpone our call by 2 hours, and yeah, it worked. I tried to be nice. It kind of worked. Okay,
For the
point
second
taken.
thing, I think if you do it right, not like I did, you have to start preparing in advance the lead code stuff like you did, the system design preparation, and so on. In my case, first of all, I hate lead code. Just feels very
Who
bad
doesn't?
to- yeah, exactly. Well, people who solve it well don't, I guess. But the most important thing that I didn't have the time. But for example, from what people from the more corporate structures told me, if you want to get into Google or something, you start preparing 6 months in advance, studying the relevant 2 books.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I heard as well.
So if I could magically change how we did that, I would change this one. But
So
it turned out to be okay anyway.
Tell us about negotiations. The thing is that most people, especially in their first, second jobs, don't really negotiate. What's your take on that?
So that's a very broad topic and one I really like because I think I'm not bad at this stuff. And usually when I tell people about negotiations, they tell me I'm telling something interesting. And so, first of all, to all the people listening that do not negotiate, I want to make a few points about why you really should and why it's okay. So in short, the idea is that essentially if you treat yourself like a kind of a business where you rent out your brain for some money, obviously if you had a renting business, you would try to find a good deal. That is, you would not undersell yourself. It would be really weird if some client came to you, you were renting cars, and they would say just, I'm gonna rent it at half your rates. And you were like, okay, I don't want to upset this person, so I will just accept. But that's exactly what a lot of people do when they encounter salary negotiations. So I think the first step is to really understand that it's in your interest. That is, it may not seem much. Usually the negotiations, they increase your rate by about 20% or something. It does not feel to be that much.
I think you managed to raise your offer by like 50%, if I'm not
No,
mistaken.
it's not 50. I think it's about Uh, 25 or 30, I don't
Okay.
remember exactly. It wasn't that much.
Okay, still
Yeah.
noticeable.
Yeah, and I recently was helping a friend, and she also managed to raise her total compensation by about 25%. And that might not seem too much, especially if it's your first or second job. But really, if you consider the compound interest of it, and the fact that next time you negotiate, you will be negotiating off your current salary.
Yeah,
whether
right.
it's-
So it's like setting a trajectory. You either set it this
Yeah.
way or this way. So the angle is small, but then if you take it a few years down the road, the difference could be huge.
Yeah, so for example, if you plug in these numbers into a retirement calculator that tells you basically at which point, given this and that strategy, you will accumulate enough money to just live off the interest of this money, this change in 20% can be like years of your life. It can be up to 10 years of your life if you consider all this
Compounding magic.
yeah, the compounding interest. So you really owe it to yourself to get the best deal. And the second thing is that it should not be taken very personally. I mean, since you're kind of negotiating for yourself, not for the business, it always feels kind of personal. You feel like a jerk if you try to get more money. But we have to remember that for the other side, for the companies, it's just a normal business process. They're just trying to get some labor in exchange for money.
Yeah, it's about managing their costs, actually, just like they would
Exactly.
negotiate for a computer.
And it's useful to take the same approach from our side, I think, because and it's not even only about money. You can negotiate for the stuff you will do, for the titles, for like promises of the future, and for a lot of stuff, for time you work. I know some people negotiate to have only 4 work days a week in exchange for reduced pay, but that's essentially a raise by 20%, you know. That's pretty good if you yeah. So so I think not taking it personally is the second biggest thing. So, and then basically after these two, if you accept these two things, you can start. And usually if you do any kind of job at this, you're already doing way better than most people. So that's pretty good, and it feels nice. And the final one is that it to stop considering as the kind of theft, I guess, in the sense that you're actually looking for a solution that suits everyone, and the company really is not interested in giving you something that you don't want to get, because if you just leave a few months later, when a competitor offers them something, they will not be happy. It's in their interest and in your interest to come to an agreement. So, but you have to make some effort for this to happen.
Yeah, I think your therapy worked, and you persuaded us that we should negotiate.
Yes.
So share some tactics how you would negotiate. Maybe 2-3 points. I don't know, some ideas.
Okay, so first, with a practical point that I find the most helpful. The most practical thing you can always do is that you tell all the companies, okay, I'm just collecting all the offers, and at this exact day, I promise to give you an answer. And there I will sit down with my family, I don't know, my wife, my girlfriend, my dog, or whatever, and decide what is the best option. And if they ask you, which is they usually don't, but I had this question once, like, don't you want to decide yourself? Like, aren't you grown up or something? You say, okay, guys, I want it to be a decision for a lot of years of my life. I want to commit to this. And it is like the place I will spend most of my waking time for the next few years. It's really important to me. So I want to make a calculated decision. And what happens is that if you follow this tactic, and you have to follow through, do exactly this. So it cannot be a lie, otherwise it will be worse than not doing it at all. If you follow through, then it really will help. That's for one. And it will also put the companies in such a position where they have to offer what they really think you're worth. And because they have to consider that there can be other options, that you will be considering them, that basically you cannot be forced to make a decision in the spur of a moment, which they usually will try to do. Like they will give you an offer and say that it expires in 2 days or something. And a lot of people, and I know, me too, everyone feels this pressure to just jump at the first opportunity. And in this job search, I actually received an offer in the last job search. I received an offer very fast in my job search, like within 2 weeks. Basically, one company was super fast. The startup, they just replied before everyone. They had all the interviews in a week with me. Everything was very streamlined and easy. And so they gave me an offer, and it was amazing. Eventually, like at the point, I thought there could be not anything better than this. Basically, all I ever wanted, especially in the moment, because they proposed more money than I even wanted to get. So I thought, wow, this is amazing. But I decided to wait still. Like I did promise them the same thing, that at some point I'll make, and a specified date, I'll make a decision. And eventually I did not pick this offer. I actually picked one at the current company, which was considerably lower. Suddenly, when you get more options, you consider more stuff. So this one thing helps like in a myriad of ways. So that would be the most practical thing I can advise.
What about some tactics like sharing your current salary, not sharing your current salary? How do you actually try to raise their offers?
This is a very sensitive topic. Usually I follow the advice that you should not share your salary. You just say that you want to hear their offer. You want to know what you're worth to the market. It has upsides and it has downsides. Like the upside is that if you ask for, I don't know, $50,000 per year, you will get no more than $50,000 per year, usually. Sometimes people will give you more if they think you're underselling yourself. Good people will do this. So that's good, but usually the negotiation will start from this number. So if this is your current salary and you actually want to get 2 times more, then it's not a good idea to share this number. And on the other hand, sometimes if you do this, you can encounter these situations where you interview with the company, you do not share your current expectations or salary, and in the end they will tell you like, okay, $10,000 or something. I mean, they will, and suddenly you will find out in the end, after all the energy spent, that it's a complete mismatch. So that's very upsetting. But given that even interviews don't happen often, that is, people do not often reply to you, and like it's very rarely that you come to the end of the pipeline and get an offer. So that's a very rare occasion. So balancing these things, I believe that it's not preferable to share what you want to get, because you might be surprised in all kinds of ways. And also with the current company, actually, the bad thing happened in that it seemed like a completely dream job. So for example, my boss is an associate professor of ML in Oxford, and his publications, they just stunned me, and we got on really fast, and the product sounded super amazing. Like, wow, you can make food anywhere, regardless of temperature. And thought, like, this is not the usual JSON moving stuff. This is JSON moving to make food.
This is JSON feeding people.
JSON
promising.
turns into salad on the shelves. That's never happened in my life before. And then they give me the offer, and it's like way lower than what I expected. But eventually, so this is not a very successful story of negotiation. That is, I did not get super high salaries, but we worked this offer till it was acceptable. And actually, in hindsight, it was a very good thing. So now I'm pretty sure it was a good decision. So in this case, even though the bad thing happened, that is, there was a mismatch, you can work around it.
All right, so I think that's it interview-wise. But I wanted to switch gears to something very similar to interviews. That's actually the way you study for interviews, and not just for interviews, but study in general. Because you have lots of experience as a student of machine learning and whatnot, and also as an instructor of machine learning and even linear algebra. So you taught quite a few students, and I think you're still teaching at Otus, right? You're teaching machine learning.
Sometimes.
Yeah, so my question is, how do you organize your own studies based on your experience as an instructor and your experience as a student? What works for you?
What I use is flashcards with short, specific questions that I did make myself. So a question appears on your screen, and then you have to reply. It can be, in my case, anything from writing out a formula to formulating what's the idea behind something, to connecting to things, to a binary, simply yes or no question. And then you answer in your head, and then you reveal the answer, and you check yourself, and then you can select your measure of how you did, like how well did you do. If you did very badly, then you can press a button and you will see this card again very soon. And if not, it will be, you will not see it for a long time. The key is that with these cards, it first systematizes the way you structure information when you learn. So you have to, studying some textbook or something, you have to ask yourself, what question I would ask myself to understand this thing, and what answer would I give? And it really makes it a kind of an active process. So usually you read something and you just scroll through and then try to, oh, what was that about? You try to remember. But in this case, you are searching the material for something to put into this software. Okay, so the software is actually something called ANKI. It's a free project, so no shame advertising it, and nobody is paying me, but it's really good. And the algorithm.
But they can pay you if they decide.
Oh, I
Please
wish.
pay.
Yeah, here could be your advertisement. Yeah. So it's a really good thing. I'm not saying you necessarily have to use the software, but I think the whole paradigm that you make it a very habitual process. So in the sense, learning becomes something like going to the gym or something. You just do it very often, and then it sticks. And just this exact approach really helps me to do it basically all the time, because I found, like, as you said, I was a teacher of linear algebra, but recently I found that I forgot what an eigenvalue is. Suddenly, I mean, I can explain some stuff, but I just encountered it in computer vision, and I'm super embarrassed because we do forget stuff. And this is the stuff I don't have Anki cards for. I did not rehearse it. So you can be like, I think I was not bad if I could teach it and my students passed all the exams very good. But still you can forget the basics. So repeating this, constantly using this stuff is very important.
So you create those Anki cards for all the stuff that you study. So for example, now you are studying a course in computer vision and you are creating an Anki card for each kind of question that you can find in this course.
Yep. Well, not each question. You have to be selective because it takes time, and it also takes time to learn this.
It surely does.
And it overwhelms you if it becomes too much work. You almost are writing more cards than actually learning stuff. So usually I have to pick, and it just comes intuitively as to what exactly you want to put down. But so usually I encounter something that I recognize as something I should know for the future or very important. So for example, with computer vision, I'm currently at the high-risk corner detection, and I just know that this is something people ask on interviews. So back to interviews again. So I have to know it, but also it's very useful for understanding other things. And then I recognize, okay, this one I should really know. And I put down some cards until I'm sure that I got it. And also I want to go back a bit. to the teaching stuff, you asked me how teaching helped. And it's actually the same idea. It is a very effective way to learn, to teach. To teach is very effective in the sense that you do not just learn, but you try to reproduce what you learned and explain to someone. I believe a lot of people call it the Feynman method, and I believe for good reason.
If you don't know something, just teach it to someone else.
Exactly. It works.
And then you
really
know
works.
it.
And the ANKI stuff is actually you just simulating this experience, except you're teaching yourself.
Okay, I think we covered the job search and we covered one side of job search, which is preparing for interviews, like studying. There is another side of it, which I found in your Telegram channel and found really interesting, is the idea of using data, some kind of predictions to figure out when to do the job search and when to emigrate, when to do anything. So I'm talking about the prediction markets. Can you please tell us about what those markets are and how they work?
Well, long story short, there are a few websites called prediction markets now, where there are specific, very well posed questions, and people can basically trade in the sense that they can forecast stuff either to earn real money or to earn play money. So the point of a market is that if you pull a lot of these predictions from a lot of people that have very good incentives to actually predict the future and not just, say what's fashionable now or what serves them, if they actually are interested, for example, to earn money, to make the best forecast, well, if you pull their predictions, you get a very good estimate. And really, the interesting part is that you can check how accurate that is. For example, the one I frequent, which is called Metaculus, it has a page where you can see the calibration plot. That is, how often does it happen? How often do the events that people forecast will happen with 20% probability actually happen? And if they happen about 20% of times, then it's a very good prediction model. So that is, if it says there is a 90% probability tomorrow will be a meteor shower or something, it's a very, there is a big chance that it's gonna happen. That is, you can trust it. And recently with some events, suddenly I found that this thing, some questions were about stuff very relevant to us, and they got it right well in advance before.
No, the stuff relevant to us is actually the war in Ukraine. But did they manage to predict the war correctly?
Well,
because until February 24th, everyone was saying that's not going to happen. That's what I said as well. I just couldn't believe that.
And me as well. That's true. That's why I'm bringing it up as an example.
But what about those markets? Did they manage to predict?
Yeah, because what happened was that I think 1.5 months in advance, the question on whether there will be a war in Ukraine until the end of the year, it was at something like 40% or something. And I sat down with my journal, and I wrote down it's a really high probability for a historic bloody event. And well, I was worried about this because, some people might think 40% is even below 50, but actually imagine that you are playing a Russian roulette game.
Imagine that you die with a 40% probability. 40% are you happy with it?
Is it a big probability? I think it's very large. And so I also didn't believe, even though I trusted the system, I saw it do some good predictions before. I also was like, this is scary, but well, it didn't happen for so many times. They always say that. And then when it did happen, I remember this point. You could tell from this market in advance, before any of the media figures I know, that you have to prepare. Maybe you couldn't say that, this is definitely going to happen. But you could say, this is very too much likely going to happen. I need to make some
do you have any ways or maybe any tricks to help you convince yourself that you should follow those predictions because they make sense? Because sometimes on an analytical level we understand that, yeah, probably there's a high probability of this happening, we should prepare. But on a more unconscious level you just think, come on, that's not going to happen, that's a very rare thing, I'd rather not worry, I'd rather keep it as it goes without any specific change in your life, because the change could be drastic. So many people just don't do anything until really bad things happen. Do you have a way to follow the guidance of those predictions?
I did that as well. So as I said, I sort of knew in advance, but I did nothing. And I think I learned from my mistake in this case. I don't think I would make this mistake again. I believe that the way to learn is to get a sense of trust in your own predictions. That is, okay, you can never trust, say, Metaculus or your friend or any other thing that just tells you, okay, definitely tomorrow is a nuclear war. But you can learn to trust yourself. You can incorporate this info. And a few times you have to try acting on this. One trick I can advise, it's a trick that my friend told me. So when you're on the edge between some options, a good thing to do is to consider the other views. So invert what's happening. For example, you are in Russia and you're considering whether you should leave. A good trick you can do is to imagine, okay, if you were outside, would you come back at this point? And it really changes your perspective, because usually we tend to favor the status quo, the current state, that is, change is scary. We prefer how it is now, irrelevant to it's no matter if it's better now or it would be better otherwise. So you can play some tricks with your mind to dampen this effect.
But then if you are not in Russia already, you're in a different status quo, right? So probably you are settled somewhere. In this case, in order to make you come back would necessitate bringing some really favorable conditions. Like if there was no war, but still, well, nothing really changing, you would come back. And it's not just because of the politics, which also makes a difference, but because of the status quo, you just don't want to change things. So
well, then you can
in order for you to make you leave, something bad should happen. But in order to make you come back, bad things not happening will not make you come. Good things happening will make you come.
But you're right. You're right. That's an interesting point. But it still gives you more perspective. So
I think I got your point. I get your point. Well, implementing this is difficult, but you just need to try different approaches that work for you to convince you to act, to do something. And one of the approaches could be the inversion that you suggested, kind of thinking a different way.
It's actually a very interesting point on how do you convince yourself that it's worth preparing. Like,
this raises another question that you covered in your channel. I think that's the question of improvised actions and acting in general, acting like theater acting. I think you mentioned an interesting book in your channel maybe a year ago, and you discussed it. The book is about how you make some impromptu decisions and some impromptu acts, kind of breaking the status quo and doing something completely different. So can you refer to any useful ideas from there that could make us more susceptible to action?
Victor, I can't stop being amazed at how deeply you studied my channel.
It took me 5 hours. That's why I postponed our session.
I'm not sure I spent so much on my channel. Like in total, definitely more than that. But wow. Thank you. That feels very nice. Okay, so regarding the improvisation theater, really, if you asked me for advice on books, then I would mention this one. It's a book by Keith Johnston called Improvisation in Theater. And that for the people watching the video, it must be a very unexpected turn of events. Okay, we're talking about interviews, learning, like predictions, and now improvisation theater. And I really wouldn't say that it is in the same way, in the sense that it will not help you to prepare for the bad stuff or make better predictions. It's a completely different thing, I think. But
will it help you act differently compared to what you're used to doing?
I think yes. In this sense, yes. Both the practice of the improvisation theater, which I'm not an expert to say the least, and the book, which is more accessible, it will change the way you perceive your own mind and how you make decisions. Mm-hmm. So it is going to help you and let you act more easily and be less serious about yourself. Okay, I have to unpack this because this is getting super confusing. So the book is not like a guidebook to how to act. It actually goes in the opposite direction. It's the author, a very accomplished person in theater, recalling his experience and a look on how the human mind and the social structure of the human society works, and how it is relevant to the theater is through the key point is that the thing we perceive as self is a mask for the society. And the improvisation theater is all about taking off this mask. And how it can help is that if you realize that a lot of the stuff you do is a mask for the others, like even a mask for yourself, it goes very deep, then it's easier to make unusual stuff. It's easier to take action even though it doesn't fit you, which is what happens with these crisis situations. You you live in Moscow your whole life, you have a job and so on, and then suddenly you have to go somewhere that's very unnatural, and your whole body and mind resists it. And you could find other examples for sure.
The interesting thing is that I think you talked about this book quite a long time ago. Yeah. So definitely before the war started. Yeah. But this might actually, I remember you shared that it helped you to start thinking in a different way. I think you took up singing, you came up with a few ideas for papers, which is kind of impressive because it's very difficult always to come up with ideas for research, and you came up with a few quite quickly. So it really helped. Do you think it helped you in your decision to move abroad to Portugal?
I think it definitely affected the way I think. So it had an effect, but a very, how do you say it?
Lateral, kind of, sideways.
Yeah.
Okay.
But a very important one. So it's one, I would say it was one of the books that really deeply affected me.
I think we should call it a day and grab some sleep. Boris, thanks a lot for your interview, for your insights and for your stories. That was super interesting to me. In addition to the Telegram channel that I spent 5 hours reading, I advise everyone to go look up the Telegram channel. We'll share a link in the description, and definitely join, subscribe and read it because that's very interesting. And subscribe to this channel as well. We'll definitely do more interesting interviews coming along. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. See you next time.